when people say, well, you don't believe in global warming, I say, no, I believe in global warming. I don't believe that human CO2 is causing that warming.
A few years ago, if you would ask me, I would tell you it's CO2. Why? Because just like everyone else in the public, I listened to what the media had to say.
Each day, the news reports grow more fantastically apocalyptic. Politicians no longer dare to express any doubt about climate change.
There is such intolerance of any dissenting voice.
Are some of the worst climate criminals on the planet.
This is the most politically incorrect thing possible, is to doubt this climate change orthodoxy.
Global warming has gone beyond politics. It is a new kind of morality.
Now, the Prime Minister's back from his holidays, unrepentant and unembarrassed about yet another long-haul destination.
Yet, as the frenzy over man-made global warming grows shriller, many senior climate scientists say the actual scientific basis for the theory is crumbling.
There were periods, for example, in Earth's history when we had 3 times as much CO2 as we have today, or periods when we had 10 times as much CO2 as we have today. And if CO2 has a large effect on climate, then you should see it in the temperature reconstruction.
If we look at climate through the geological time frame, we would never suspect CO2 as a major climate driver.
None of the major climate changes in the last 1,000 years can be explained by CO2.
We can't say that CO2 will drive climate. It certainly never did in the past.
I've often heard it said that there is a consensus of thousands of scientists on the global warming issue and that humans are causing a catastrophic change to the climate system. Well, I am one scientist, and there are many that simply think that is not true.
Man-made global warming is no ordinary scientific theory.
This morning, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change made up of...
It is presented in the media as having the stamp of authority of an impressive international organization.
From the IPCC,
the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC.
The IPCC, like any UN body, is political. The final conclusions are politically driven.
This claim that the IPCC is the world's top 1,500 or 2,500 scientists. You look at the bibliographies of the people and it's simply not true. There are quite a number of non-scientists.
And to build the number up to 2,500, they have to start taking reviewers and government people and so on, anyone who ever came close to them. And none of them are asked to agree. Many of them disagree.
Those people who are specialists but don't agree with the polemic and resign, and there have been a number that I know of, they are simply put on the author list and become part of this 2,500 of the world's top scientists.
People have decided you have to convince other people that since no scientist disagrees, you shouldn't disagree either. But that, whenever you hear that in science, that's pure propaganda.
We are told that the Earth's climate is changing. But the Earth's climate is always changing. In Earth's long history, there have been countless periods when it was much warmer and much cooler than it is today, when much of the world was covered by tropical forests, or else vast ice sheets. The climate has always changed, and changed without any help from us humans. We can trace the present warming trend back at least 200 years, to the end of a very cold period in Earth's history. This cold spell is known to climatologists as the Little Ice Age.
Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. It doesn't show signs of stopping.
In the 14th century, Europe plunged into the Little Ice Age. And where we would look for evidence of this are the old illustrations and prints and pictures of Old Father Thames, because during the hardest and toughest winters of that Little Ice Age, the Thames would freeze over. And there were wonderful ice fairs held on the Thames, skating and people actually selling things on the ice.
If we look back further in time, before the Little Ice Age, we find a balmy golden era, when temperatures were higher than they are today, a time known to climatologists as the medieval warm period.
It's important that people know that climate enabled a quite different lifestyle
in the medieval period. We have this view today that warming is going to have apocalyptic outcomes. In fact, wherever you describe this warm period, it appears to be associated with riches.
We're having a heat wave.
In Europe, this was the great age of the cathedral builders, a time when, according to Chaucer, vineyards flourished even in the north of England.
All over the city of London, there are little memories of the vineyards that grew in the medieval warm period. So this was a wonderfully rich time. And this little church, in a sense, symbolizes it, because it comes from a period of great wealth.
Going back in time further still, before the medieval warm period, we find more warm spells, including a very prolonged period during the Bronze Age, known to geologists as the Holocene Maximum, when temperatures were significantly higher than they are now for more than 3 millennia.
If we go back 8,000 years in the Holocene period, our current interglacial, it was much warmer than it is today. Now, the polar bears obviously survived that period. They're with us today. They are very adaptable, and these warm periods in the past, what we call hypsithermals, pose no problem for them.
Since the mid-19th century, the Earth's temperature has risen by just over ½ degree Celsius. But this warming began long before cars and planes were even invented. What's more, most of the rise in temperature occurred before 1940, during a period when industrial production was relatively insignificant. After the Second World War, during the post-war economic boom, temperatures, in theory, should have shot up. But they didn't. They fell. Not for 1 or 2 years, but for 4 decades. In fact, paradoxically, it wasn't until the world economic recession in the 1970s that they stopped falling.
Temperature went up significantly up to 1940, when human production of CO2 was relatively low. And then in the post-war years, when industry and the whole economies of the world really got going, and human production of CO2 just soared, the global temperature was going down. In other words, the facts didn't fit the theory.